This episode of Yes But Why podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and a 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/yesbutwhy. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. Download your free audiobook today at audibletrial.com/yesbutwhy. I'm Amy Jordan, and this is Yes But Why podcast. Yeah.
So you mentioned that you aren't originally from Chicago, but that's where you are now. How did you get to Chicago?
Through a long trial and error trying to escape from Ohio. I grew up east of Cleveland. I did not love it. But I went to school down in Athens at Ohio University, and then moved up to Columbus, which is a great city. And but I was determined from my childhood that I wanted to leave Ohio. So I actually went to school for a Bachelor of Specialized Studies in Theater, Film Acting, and Voice. And so naturally, I fell into retail after graduation.
Yeah.
Yep. So I ended up getting a management job for a college bookstore, and kind of grew rapidly within the company. Yeah, I'm 100% Slytherin. So my ambition kind of put me in that role, and I excelled at it, and pretty soon I outgrew it. So my boss moved me to Pennsylvania to a much larger store, and I was miserable there. I was in a small town, and I'm just a city girl. So I spent 3 years there before still achieved a lot in my role. And so the home office handpicked me and one other manager to come to the home office for a new department. So that relocated me out to Chicago. I have since left that company. I realized there's only so much of my soul I was willing to give to a corporation, and I reached my limit. So, so now I work for a tech startup on the south side of Chicago, and then in my free time, what little of it I have, I manage Rem, and I'm working on more freelance work for voice work and voice acting and recording audiobooks and teaching singing, and my specialty is dialect, and then everything else I do. So I'm never really holding still.
Now you've kept the day job. You still working? You said you work at a tech startup in Chicago.
Yeah, I kept it for now. The goal is to go entirely freelance, but Rem is still fairly new. Rem Alternis. Mm-hmm. So while I'm waiting for us to finish the trailer and really see what direction that's going to go, we have a lot of ideas and plans, but we're waiting on funding. So once we're there, totally. we'll see if I can go full time.
Yeah, absolutely. It is interesting. I talk to a lot of different people, and the idea of going full time with it versus keeping the day job. A lot of people are like, I like to keep theater as my fun thing. I want it to be the thing that helps me in my life. And if it's my job, I don't know if I can do that. And so they'll have a regular, 9 to 5, and then they'll do the theater in the evenings. But, some of us are like, no, I'm going to do theater all the time. And I've definitely been all the way. Like when you said I got a theater degree, so I got into retail, I was like, yeah, exactly. I worked at the Gap for like 2 years. Heck yeah. But that being said, best times. Like I look back at that time fondly. I actually have rose-colored glasses for most of my life, and so I imagine when I worked at the Gap, like one of those Gap commercials where everyone's dancing around with jackets. Yeah, that's what I think happened.
Awesome.
So that's what I tell myself. But you are, you got to Chicago through the job, or like, did you get, hired from the tech startup away, or did you keep working at some corporate gig that got you to Chicago and then you went to the tech startup?
Yeah, so I moved to Chicago with the corporate gig for the college textbook company, and about a year and a half later, I didn't like the corporate environment, so I went back to the field for a little bit. But as per our current job industry, I feel like the corporation kept getting like more and more evil and selfish. So finally, I was at a point where I didn't have it in me to do it anymore. So I actually left and went to Starbucks for a year and a half.
Yeah,
on a high level, they're very socially responsible. They offer benefits to part-timers. So they have some really ethical practices, but within the four walls, it was just chaos. So I did that for a year and a half. And then I decided I was going to try to go work part-time for Starbucks and do some of my creative stuff, but I hadn't really nurtured or cultured my following yet. So I was paying my rent, but not my bills. And so about 6 months into doing that, I found this tech startup. And I really love the startup environment. I love the creativity. I love the culture. It's a really great company, and we're also helping people in social needs, who have social needs in a healthcare environment. So I'm really excited about what the mission is and stuff like that. So I'm perfectly happy to be there while I get my side hustle figured out.
Yeah, no, absolutely. If you can work somewhere, I mean, I was just trying to think of it the other day. Like, I was like, okay, if I had a job, if I was going to have a job, what's the thing that I want to help? Like, how can I do it? Because there's one of two, in my opinion, when you get a job, if you're not doing it for like, this is my career life, then you get a job for one of two reasons. Either you go because you like what this company is doing and you want to like work for them and help them, or you need something, so you go to the store that sells that so you get the discount for it. That's all. Like, I'm like, do you want to buy video games? Go work at GameStop. That's why people work at GameStop. Like, I would go work at the store where I buy clothes. Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Like, what? I get a discount? Heck yeah. That's what I want,
That's funny.
I mean, in my mind, and so I like the idea that you kind of found this tech startup and it turned out that it like really helped people, because, that's if you can find that, that's some gold right there. Some life gold right there.
It's a great company, and it was funny because I actually interviewed for the position that I'm now managing over, and at the interview they were like, well, tell me about all this management experience. I was like, no thanks, I'm past it. And they were like, well, why? And I told them all my reasons. I was tired of working 60-hour weeks. I needed to be a person. Other things in my life were more important to me. And they were like, this is a 9 to 5 and the world keeps spinning if you're not here. Why don't you try it? And I was like, I'll try it, but if I don't like it, I reserve the right to step back. And honestly, it's everything that I love about management. I love my team. I love my people. They keep me motivated, and it allows me to be the kind of manager that I wish I could have been under corporate rules.
Oh, man. Who knows? I mean, I hear about all these startups where it's like really great and there's a lot of good culture. Perhaps it is just, the flow in of the new generation. I mean, I was just talking to somebody the other day. I teach kids sometimes, and one of the things that really warms my heart is that I teach these middle school kids, and we talk about comedy all the time. So I'm always asking them what they think is funny, what they're thinking about, what it's, what they're interested in. And the way they talk and they're just so level-headed and smart that I'm like, we're going to be fine, because they're going to be the senators when I'm 70 and 80. So we're going to be fine. Like,
good. That gives me hope.
Yeah. I mean, they're like great. You know what I mean? Like, they're just like, why do we have to worry about that? Like, let's just be nice. I'm like, yeah, you're right. Okay, great. Like, there were like problems that adults thought would happen in the group, like watch out for blank, blank, and blank, were never the problems. It was always other different things, but it was like this sort of natural humanity of like kindness and like being friends with each other wasn't a problem. And I was like, yay.
Oh, that's awesome.
I'm so glad. That wasn't like, hey, talk to this person. It was like, oh, They talk to everybody, even the weird kids. Like by the end,
Right.
everybody was like singing and dancing and having a great time. And I was like, this is nice. So, hey, you know,
So
that's why I have hope.
basically burst into a musical routine.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it was kind of a musical theater, so that's not not too crazy of them to have done, realistically. You mentioned that you were coming from teaching tonight. What were you teaching tonight?
Yeah, I'm substitute teaching for some singing classes for individual lessons for students. I haven't been doing that as long, and I kind of took a break from it for a little bit. My focus is on dialect and accents. I can do about 8 of them, and I'm learning a 9th right now. And I teach them to local theaters and groups and schools and stuff like that. And I'm really passionate about it. And I found out when I was like 15 that I had an aptitude for it. And it's one of my favorite things to do is just to bust out into different dialects. So yeah, in terms of my voice work and my recordings and stuff like that, most of it's in dialect, so I can practice.
That's great. That's awesome. I have zero knack for it. I am no good. My husband makes fun of me on the regs. I will try to do an Irish accent, and I end up Jamaican somehow. I don't know why.
Irish is one of my favorites. It's all about placement and resonance. So if you can just get it featured where you need it, it's pretty. You can cheat 90% of the thing.
Man, I wish I should take a class from you. It's such a funny thing, and it's so important. And I'm so glad that, you know, it must be really interesting to, you know, be interacting with the acting community in Chicago. There's so much that's going on there, from, you know, film and theater and improv. Like there's just so many different kinds of people that might be interested in doing accents. I feel like there must be a lot going on. Are you substituting, meaning you're helping a friend in a theater where they work?
So it's American Music Institute, and they offer voice lessons and different instruments and stuff like that to children and adults, but it's mostly children. And my old instructor actually, she is on maternity leave, so they needed someone to sub the classes for her. So I said I'd take them on, and it's been a while since I've done it, and I really love teaching and training and stuff like that. So really stepping in to see where these kids are and picking up in the middle of their lessons and the practices that they've been doing with her. And kind of putting my own little spin on it and little tips and tricks that might help them take the next step forward is really rewarding and exciting.
Yeah, so you're working with kids too, huh? You got any like little Meryl Streeps?
Not yet that I've come across. Like I said, I'm only subbing right now, so I haven't found anyone that's out of this world. But I think the oldest I've got is like 2nd grade. So they're still using their baby voices.
They're doing accents in their baby voices? Oh my God.
Well, most of them are singing, but yeah, the ones when we are teaching accents and stuff, I've got little sheets for them. Like for British, I teach them to kind of make like a lemon face or a kissy face and squeeze their mouth together as they talk. That small mouth helps them get it in the position they need it to. So they can cheat a little bit of the sounds that way, and they tend to get more of them across. So that's really fun.
That's fun. I love it. Don't give away any more of your trade secrets. We're going to be selling this for cash money, ladies and gentlemen. Hire her immediately. She's going to teach you. Listen, are you in a play? Are you being paid a lot of money in a Chicago play? You need help. She can help you. You never know. Don't give it away. So tell me, so I feel like we've jumped around a little bit. So you got to Chicago through a job. Did you you mentioned that you were in a bit of a lull creatively. How long was your lull? Like, just to commiserate with you, I had a 2-year lull because of a boyfriend that was a little tumultuous. So, and I feel that lull. Like I remember, oh my God, I can't believe I didn't do theater for that long.
Yeah.
How did it go for you? Maybe small town Pennsylvania, not so theatery?
Yeah, not so much. So I didn't have a lot to do there. I tried to do some creative things. I started dog training because I got both of my puppies when I lived out there. They were my company. And then I would watch TV and paint birdhouses and stuff because there's just nothing to do. And I did a lot of exploring by myself because I lived close to a lot of big cities, so I would day trip on the weekends.
Awesome.
But I think that was a big lull. And I kind of, in Ohio, I didn't have the energy right after college for it sounds snobby here, but community theater. Because I just didn't want to play the politics game, and that was what I was used to seeing. So I kind of stepped away. Yeah, I kind of stepped away for a while, and then when I got to Chicago, I met my boyfriend within 6 months. And so I kind of was still away from it for at least another year. And then I finally, while I was working for the college bookstore, I met a director at that school I was at, and he teaches folio technique at the Chicago Shakespeare Theater, and he let me audit his theater class, and he is the best director I think I have ever worked with. And he just rekindled and relit that fire, and it felt like a piece of my soul that had been missing that I didn't even realize was missing was back in place. So that kind of got me creatively ignited again.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I still dialect coach for him when he has a play going on that has, he did Doubt, so he needed New York accents for that one. So
right on.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's nice when, when you take a break that you can call some friends, because one of the things that I really enjoy, and kind of one of the reasons why I really enjoy doing this podcast, is just knowing that people I know are all around the world doing theater. Right now, at this moment, there are people that are doing rehearsals for serious plays. There are people who are writing plays. There are people who are in the last throes of editing a film. There are people who are trying to negotiate funding for a small theater in Vermont, all sorts of stuff. All of it's happening, and that the idea of that is just so exciting to me. So I love that there was a friend of yours that you could call upon when you were like, okay, wait, I feel like I've lost something. Where is it? I'm going to call my friend. And then you were able to capture it. What was the class that you audited with him? What did you experience?
It was Shakespeare's folio technique, which, so I've always loved Shakespeare, and he's, a genius already, but then learning about folio technique and how it has kind of passed by word of mouth through actors through the ages, and how, back in the day, they'd say, well, we're going to be playing Juliet, and you go on stage tomorrow night, so learn your lines. And there's no time for rehearsal, no time for stage directions, but then the stage directions are written into the text itself in terms of delivery, in terms of the emotional cadence of these characters and stuff like that. And that just blew my mind on top of everything else that's in a Shakespeare piece. And his passion and excitement for it is part of the magic that I experienced in that class. So it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, that's great. Do you still keep in touch with him since you're still in Chicago, even though you're maybe not doing as much Shakespeare?
Yeah, I met up with him. I think in the spring we met up for coffee. He's a coffee addict, and I told him everything that I was doing. He told me everything he's doing. His book is about to get published, which is super exciting, and he's actually about to put on Shakespeare in Love. And I'm kind of debating right now because I really want to audition for it, and I really want to work with him again. But I'm also I have a full-time job. I have Rem, which is a full-time job. I have freelancing, which is a full-time job. I need to sleep.
Can you also be a lead in a play, which is a full-time
right?
job? I don't know. I mean, if you have the energy to do it, I say do it now. You're going to turn 50 one day and be like, I can't do one thing today, never mind four.
That's kind of what my thought is. I have a friend, when I was in college, I was in the fencing club, and my fencing coach he was like my adopted father, and he was that guy where he had done everything. He had learned how to scuba dive because he had a fear of deep water. He could fence. He had his own blacksmithing forge and stuff like that. And I was like, man, when I'm 40, I want to be that cool and have that many stories. And so I think that kind of inspired me to, I want to do that. I want to do that. Well, I'm going to go do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for real. I've always been a big proponent of, like, you got to have your adventures when you want to have them. There's no, like, putting them off or, hey, we'll do that later. I mean, it's one thing if it's like you have to take a really expensive trip somewhere and you, like, have to, you know, raise money in some way. I get that. But, like, you know, if you want to do something, like, put it on the list and make it a priority as it goes, you know? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, you only live once, and so you might as well tell your story the way you want it told. And even, you know, there's challenges with living that way, but there's challenges with not. And I think I remember a friend right out of college didn't have much of a savings, but she was so rich in life experiences, and I was really jealous of all the travel that she had done and all the things that she had seen. And meanwhile, I was working my 60-hour work weeks.
You know what, though? There's something to be said about that. There really is something to be said about spending the time to do the work, because I feel like there's the hard part of adulthood is knowing how to navigate the harder parts. Like, oh, I have $0, but everyone's bills are due today. What do I do now? Or like, oh, everything broke. How do I fix it? If that doesn't happen to you at least once, there's never going to be a time when later, and it does happen again, because it will, like, you're going to be comfortable. And I'm not saying like I'm super comfortable when the sink breaks, but I'm certainly like, all right, well, I know how to fix this. You know what I mean? Like, because stuff went on. Like, even just right before I called you, it just started raining here. And it went from, like, totally dry outside to, like, monsoon in 30 seconds. And I was like, whoa, okay.
Oh, wow.
And so we got a flash flood alert on our phones. And I was like, oh, nah, we don't have to worry about that. It never comes in the house. And then, like, my brain went, but what if today's the day? And it was just like, well, you'll do whatever you have to do. You'll move stuff out of the way. I mean, what are you going to do? You can't stop that. Like, the rain's coming out of the sky. You're not, like, in charge of it, you know. So I was like, okay. So to a certain extent, you know, there's something to be said for some control, but then there's sometimes it's like you've got to go through life and figure out all those things and go through the ups and downs. I mean, working even in the corporate environment that didn't rub you the right way, at least at least you're aware of it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, and honestly, I still got some skills that have been transferable even all the way now to Rem, where I've done project management, I've led teams, and I wouldn't have had that experience without the jobs that I've had.
So, okay, so we went to, you're at Chicago Shakespeare Theater with your friend. What's your friend's name, by the way? I feel like we've talked about this person, but I haven't heard a name.
Sure. Kevin Long.
Kevin Long.
A phenomenal, If you're in the area, look him up. Go see a show that he's helping with. He teaches at Harper College, and he's just this ray of joy.
Yeah, awesome. So after you take his class, what is it that gets you going? What do you start getting involved in? Because right now you're doing a film production company. How do you go from Shakespeare to that? What was the next step creatively?
Yeah, it was still kind of a few years away from Rem, but the next thing I did was audition for a play at a local theater. And I'm actually still involved with them. I'm their dialect coach, and I started their education program. So I'm their education director, but I'm not nearly as helpful these days as I should be.
Maybe you do have enough jobs. Maybe I was a bad maybe I was a bad influence friend a second ago. Maybe you're good.
Yeah,
don't climb that mountain.
Everything, and I want to try everything, right?
Sure.
So,
but you will live for longer than you think. So you can do those things,
so
you know.
I did a couple of plays with them, and I really fell back in love with my characters. I'm really able to compartmentalize, and I guess the closest thing is method act, so I can put aside my problems and take on someone else's, which is really cathartic for me. I'm an escapist. So meanwhile, here's a transition. While I have been doing all this theater and starting theater up again, I was also gaming with my friends. I'm a big role-playing gamer. And we've been playing Dungeons & Dragons, And then we had kind of transitioned to this new game that a friend of mine is a writer for. It's a cyberpunk fantasy role-playing game, and we started playing that. And I thought it was going to be real dumb. I was like, oh, that sounds stupid. I don't want to play cyberpunk. It's lame. So meanwhile, the play I was in ended, and I started going through character withdrawal. So as I would meet with these friends once a week, I was like, well, I guess I'll care about this character. So I got into gaming real hard with that character. I got really into the lore and the world of the game that he had set up. He's an amazing storyteller. And about a year and a half later, I mean, sitting at the table once a week wasn't enough for me. So we started side texting, little adventures that my character would go on in the meantime. And I fell more and more in love with this character until finally I was like, I want to write it. So I am not a writer. I'm a word vomiter. So I started writing this novelized version that I figured I could hand to him to actually, since he's an actual writer, so he could make it better. But I don't have a lot of patience for writing. So finally, it was about 3 weeks before a major gaming convention, and I had a dream that we had turned it into a TV series. And I woke up and I texted him, and I'm like, that's funny. I want to do it. So from there, I wrote a pilot episode that was real not good in about 3 weeks. And then at the convention, I presented it to the line developer of that game that he had played, just to see what he thought of it, if it was, get feedback on it. And he gave me a ton of edits, and a year later we had a really solid pilot script. And we were ready for a Kickstarter to produce a trailer and really show what we could do.
Oh, wow. So that's the project, that your inaugural project with your film production company.
Yeah. So, the first year of Rem was all about, Rem Alternis, by the way, means alternate reality in Latin.
Nice.
And,
nice.
Yeah. And so, it's got that gaming element into it and that fantasy element, which I love. And we launched the Kickstarter this summer. It got funded. And now we are in pre-production for the trailer. We're going to be shooting in February. And it should be completely done by May and in time for the convention circuit this next year. And we really want to use it to build up a following so that we can run a Kickstarter and really and do the series for real, which the budget's going to be a lot higher for. But we really want to show the quality and the value of what we can accomplish together.
That's awesome. That's awesome on various fronts. One being just the collaborative nature of developing this idea, and, how it started out in a sort of just playful way. And then, you got so deep into the character that you had to write the story. I feel like that's you say you're not a writer, but that's kind of how it works. That's how a writer is. You have a story that lives inside of you, and it yells and screams until you let it out. And you did it. So everyone needs help. We all work together. And in fact, if you don't get help, it's not working out. So it also, 100%. I love the idea that the conventions was such a good community builder, that that's where you found the first few people to collaborate with, and that you're going to bring it back to conventions, because you're right. I love that crowd. I go to just a handful every year of, comic book conventions or horror conventions, just ones that friends of mine are involved with. And then we'll go and we're like, oh, it's so fun. And everyone's so nice. And it's just such a good crowd for sure.
Yeah, it feels like every time I go, it's oh, it's my people.
Yeah.
They're gamers, they're nerds, they're just a lot of fun and very creative people that aren't afraid to, put themselves out there for something that they love. I really believe there's no more passionate fan base than nerds. If you've got I played softball for 14 years, so I have friends that are more sporty, and they're yeah, sports are cool, but it's so laid back, where if you find someone that likes a board game or something, they're oh my God, I love that game, we need to talk about this. They're just so passionate and excited, and willing to help. I by no means could be as far as I am without the team that I've built, and that started with finding and meeting people at conventions.
Yeah, awesome. I really do enjoy that. I hope that like it's interesting the way art is these days, the way film and putting stuff out there, you don't need to necessarily wait for a television channel or whatever. The internet's just there and available for you, and you can make it paywall or not, or you can release it in a live, like put it up in your own local movie theaters or whatever, just DVDs. I don't know if maybe DVDs aren't, people don't use those anymore, but you know what I mean? Like, like there's a way to like make money off of it and also like keep it niche, which is super great and awesome, especially because like these days, niche is the way. And the more you can connect to people, I mean, people just want to be connected to. And the idea that there's this small community that you're already a part of, that, you're putting this show into, that's really wonderful. Did everybody that's in your team that's like works in the film production company, were they all like fellow convention, players, people that were going and doing the Dungeons and Dragons games with you? Was it closer friends, or like how did you meet everybody? And you don't have to tell like individual stories.
I think it all started with Scott. He's the writer, my friend, the writer, and he's the storyteller that kind of got all this started. And I had been to a couple of Gen Cons there in Indianapolis. It's a big gaming convention every year. I had been to a couple, but really I would like sit in the game library and just play board games the whole time. And then a couple years into going to those conventions, when I was really starting to get into the character, I went to one in Columbus, Ohio, and that's where I met more of the RPG gaming community. And not this past June, the one before, I started meeting even more people, and that's where I met some of my core team, where I finally started talking about my idea, and I had a couple people pull me aside and go, what can I do? Can I invest, or can I help, or, what do you need? And I was like, well, what do you do? And there was one that was a web developer, and there's people that have done social media, or people that have run a Kickstarter before, or are very involved in Kickstarters. And I was like, these are all skills I don't have. Come to me. So that was the first year in getting it all set up. And then this past year, I met a few more people at conventions that were content writers. So they could write, the pitches for me that I wasn't really great at writing, or they could do. I had someone that had experience with press releases, so they wrote that for me. So everyone that has been part of the team just is really excited about cyberpunk, really excited about fantasy, really excited about gaming, and really excited about the story that we want to tell, and the passion and what Rem brings to the table. Not just as, we don't just want to be a film company, we don't just want it all to be about Chicago shadows. We want to be more than that, and some of that is also being a supportive beacon in the community. Like if you're looking for a new podcast, if you're looking for a new book to read or a new game to play, we have a We Support page on our website for creators and content makers and stuff like that are good people that live by our values of inclusion, individualism, and acceptance. Because we want a very inclusive and welcoming community. We want a safe space, and we want to work with people that want the same thing.
Totally. Have you ever done, because you're in Chicago, have you ever done any improv? I feel like the improv way of developing stories could be very helpful, especially since you're like, since you say, and I don't know if I believe you, but since you say you're not good at writing stuff. But purely just, it made me think of it because you were talking about creating the character and, developing stuff. And I was like, wait, there's whole schools built around doing improv to write like pieces, like to write, usually it's to write sketch comedy, but you can certainly use an improv scene to develop literally any scene that you'd like. So I just wondered if you'd ever done that in your acting, or at least thought about taking a class as a story developer. I also feel like it would probably help in the role-playing games for sure as well.
Yeah, years ago I did improv, and I actually got my start with acting through a medieval fair in Ohio.
Oh, awesome.
And
Yes.
yeah, it was so fun.
Yes,
and,
that's like natural
dialect,
improv.
Right?
Yeah.
So, it started with that. And it was something I enjoyed. I enjoyed comedy. I did a little bit of it in college. But really, I've kind of, I don't know why I stopped. I think that's kind of like the reason for everything else, where I got focused on the job and it's another hobby.
Well, it can also be like you were saying about community theater. It can be a little drama sometimes.
Yeah, it can. I mean, that can happen anywhere, and I'm kind of more used to that and better equipped to handle it as I've gotten a little bit older. So, yeah, it's something that I could do. I think where I struggle with writing is my brain goes so fast in terms of the ideas that I can't write fast enough to keep all the ideas on paper. It all moves on too quickly, or I lose my train of thought, or I think it's patience more than anything else. So yeah, like I will kind of improv in my head, especially when I'm driving, because when you're in Chicago, it's going to take you 30 minutes or to an hour to get anywhere. So I sit and I think a lot, and like even for the pilot, and we're going to have a 6-episode season 1. For these scenes, like I'll just pick a scene and I just play out in my head the several different ways that it could go, depending on who reacts how, and what it would look like cinematically, and from what angles would we be watching this and stuff like that. So I more of have that visual mindset than like the written mindset. I think I'm more a kinesthetic person than a visual person.
Well, it also seems like you're very much a leader as well, like an organizer, a leader, a person who sees the big picture and puts it all together. I mean, purely the idea of even knowing what people could do for you is a skill. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. Like there's a lot where, people don't know even what to ask for. They're like, I'd like to say help, but I don't know what I'd have you do. Like, right. So like you're smart already being like, okay, well, I need this. I need, social media presence. I need that, like all sorts of, the organizing that you've already done. And even just now, as you're describing, thinking about, scenes in your head as you're driving, that's so like in my mind, it's like, yeah, that's total big picture stuff, like in your brain. How do you think you got into, like, how do you think you got so good at being an organizer and being leadership, or do you think it's kind of just a natural state of being?
I mean, I've always been outspoken. My mom specifically wanted to raise me to speak my mind, despite some regrets in my teenage years.
Sure.
But I think, being a manager early on, I became a manager when I was 22 years old, and I've done it ever since then. So I think growing with that, and really like in my heart, I want to be a good manager and I want to be a good person. I'm good at motivating people to want to lead for me, to follow me, because I care about what's important to them. So if it's, my web developer, for instance, he's done all that, and he can do it, and he's willing to do it, but he's really excited by the filmography aspects and some of the video and sound editing. So if I can give him resources, like things to work on, like during our Kickstarter, we got a little animation done of our dragons flying around our world, and he took that and kind of made it blow fire, or do like a flyby and have a visual effect with the percentage that we had reached at the Kickstarter and stuff like that. And he really enjoyed that and learning that new skill, and having more of a creative feel to it. So, I really try to, sometimes I mess up and I over-focus him on the web development stuff, and then he reminds me, and I'm like, oh yeah, we gotta develop that in you. So why don't you work on doing something like this? And we come up with an idea together of what we can work on next. So I think really investing your time and your people is what makes a strong manager, and that's what makes people want to. I definitely make mistakes. I definitely have to reorganize. Like I had a deadline in my head for all the stuff we wanted to get done, and then those deadlines got pushed back, but I wanted to stay on schedule, so then I started throwing more at them, and I was like, okay, I just need to slow down. What are the priorities? Here are the priorities. Let's just focus on them, because right now everyone is helping for cheap, if not free, until we can get off the ground and funded and everything else. So I appreciate every minute that they put towards this, and I try to just sometimes hold myself back a little bit.
It can be hard, but it's important to have a leader, especially with creative projects. There's a lot of ways it could go wild. So
there's a lot of balance.
Yeah.
Like right now, it's pre-production and getting the rewards done from the Kickstarter. And I could focus on a lot of things. I could focus for the next Kickstarter. I could do grant proposals. I could do more social media presence and building that following. I could do the freelance stuff. I have a writer and an editor on my team. I could start working on getting an online store and the future of Rem all together and stuff like that. I have to remind myself I am one human being.
Yeah.
And I have people willing to help me, but we all need to have lives and take it slow.
Yeah, totally. So I have a question for you, and it's kind of out of left field, and hopefully you can think about it and tell me what you think. I've been interested in this. I think that, hard times in your life often beget lessons. You'll have something crazy happen, unexpected, not your plan, but then it turns out to be great, and it turns out to be just what you needed. Is there a time in your life that you can think of that sounds like that, where it wasn't what you wanted, it wasn't what you expected, but it turned out to be just what you needed?
Yeah. I think it's dumb a little bit, because I try to, I think of myself as, strong, independent woman. But like I said, I got in a relationship 6 months after moving here, and since I didn't really have any other hobbies, he kind of became my hobby and his friend. And so it was constantly at home, when's he getting home? What are we going to do for dinner? What are we doing together? And it wasn't until we didn't communicate well. So it wasn't until 3 years into our relationship where we split up that I needed to be my own person, and I needed to kind of rebuild that. And as soon as I did, it was really freeing. There were times it was hard, but I was able to do the stuff that I loved again. I started fencing again. I found a fencing group. I started to do all my freelance stuff. I founded Rem, and I don't know that if I had still been in that relationship that I would have been able to motivate myself to get as much done as I had. So I think that was one. You meet someone and you think it's going to be forever, but I think it really was for the best. And I still am friends with him. I think fondly of him and everything like that. But I don't think I'd be where I am now, and I'm probably the happiest I've ever been in my life now. If I hadn't gone through the hardship of losing him and losing all of his friends that were my friends, but were really his friends. So, I think that was probably the hardest thing I went through that kind of led to where I am now, and kind of was able to turn it around. And I think also, as I experienced the pain that comes with a breakup, I think diving into my work and diving into Rem really helped me cope with that. And it was that substitute for a relationship that I needed.
Oh man, I that's how I cope with everything. When I first, every single time I've like had a big breakup, I've immediately turned around and done like 4 million different projects purely out of like, I need to stop thinking about this. So I'm going to distract myself with 40,000 things to do.
You can't feel feelings when you're too busy to feel feelings.
Right? And look at all you're accomplishing. Everything's fine.
Yeah, I mean, there were nights that it was really hard and it would all catch up to me and it would hit me. And it took about 2 years to really heal from that. But honestly, like, even now I'm in a place where I met someone at a convention. He lives in Montreal, so I might be relocating to Montreal. But like, it's a really positive and strong relationship. And I learned a lot from the last one, so our communication is great. And, you know, I think every experience you have helps shape you for where you're supposed to go. And as long as you can look back and see, like, okay, that happened because of this. Now I know this about myself. I learned this. This is what I want and who I want to be with and what I want to do. And, you know, I need someone who's a good communicator. I want someone who's a gamer. I want a job where I'm investing in myself, not just some company that can replace me within a week. Like, every step that I've gone through has led to Rem, and I'm grateful for that.
That's great. That's great. I also like you're not only you like a solid leader. I like that you have this like vision, and that's really wonderful. You know, one of the things I've found in theater is that I think of myself more as a technician than I would as listening to you talk about your project and all this stuff. You have this vision, you have this like creativity. I think of myself like a technician. Like, I want to do it. I want to do the things. I want to fix this and make this work and make the fly rail go up and down. I want to do all the schedules and talk to the people and let the people in the theater and, you know, that I want to do the work. And I hear you and your vision, and it's like, oh, this is so great. Like, it's so amazing. That will keep you going forever. Like, all of your creative ideas is just going to like keep you so on track. Like, I'm just excited to see how, you know, Chicago Shadows goes and how other projects that you have go, because, like, I don't know, you just have a really great energy.
Thank you. That means a lot. It's exciting, and, you know, being a doer too is valuable, especially at this day and age. Sometimes you get more coasters than doers. So, I might have to reach out to you and be like, hey, I need more doers on my team.
Yeah, I mean, Austin, Texas, whatever we can do. In fact, you know, even though this will totally date this episode when we recorded it, but I am about to do Austin Film Festival, and that's a really great spot to, you know, send new series to get seen by industry peeps. So maybe in the future we can get you to Austin Film Festival, and then we can, you know, meet in the flesh.
That would be amazing.
Listen, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I really appreciate you chatting with me and sharing your, you know, inspiration and journey with me. It's been really great.
Yeah, thank you. This was a lot of fun.
Good. Thank you so much for working hard and putting this whole together. And also, like, I'm excited about the future conventions and all the people that you get to connect with. I think that it's a really awesome sort of like niche project where the people that are super into that style and the characters, they're going to like lose their minds for the work that you put in.
I hope so. Mind loss is one of our company goals in our mission.
Thanks for listening to Yes But Why Podcast. Check out all our episodes on yesbutwhypodcast.com or check out all the content on our network, HC Universal, at hcuniversalnetwork.com.